Morning, everybody. My name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tom.
I hope you can hear me all right. Good. If you can't, let me know if you can't. My son, Miles, has recently come into the fellowship, and he's just 21, and he's got a sponsor and 90 meetings in 90 days and all that. And so I was driving him away from a meeting in Guildford last week, and I said to him, is there anybody in Alcoholics Anonymous who really annoys you? And he said, what? Apart from you, Dad? And you might find out in the next 20 minutes what he means. So I don't really talk about drinking. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm at Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm around Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. But I don't drink anymore, and I haven't had a drink for almost 27 years now, a day at a time, or a drug. But I do tell one drinking story, because I do think it's important for us to identify. And so I used to live in South Wimbledon, opposite the Irish Club. And a few cheers there for the Irish Club. And this particular day I'd been drinking in another pub up in South Wimbledon, and I got barred about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I went back down to the Irish Club and I said, Pat in the Prince of Wales has barred me. And they said, well, don't worry, Tom, we never bar anybody in here. Well, they made an exception 2 weeks later. And I was barred. And I had no idea what for. Absolutely no idea. 6 months goes by and I see nobody from the Irish Club. And I come back from a meeting, because by that time I'd got into Alcoholics Anonymous, and the governor from the club had parked his car in my parking space. So I went over and I rang the bell, and I could hear all the high diddly-eye music, the crack, you know. That was when crack meant crack. And Jim answered, and I said, look, don't worry, Jim, I'm not looking to get back in, but could you move your car, please? And I said, while I'm here and talking to you, I want to tell you that I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if I've got any amends to make, if I've got any broken furniture that needs fixing, if I've got any windows need replacing, or what I really feared, of course, was if there was anybody's wife I needed to apologize to, I would like to do it. And he said, Tom, he said, the reason that you were barred by Pat in the Prince of Wales, and the reason that you were barred by us is very simple. We could see that you were killing yourself, and we did not want to be part of it. God works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. And if anybody is new or coming back, I want to tell you, as a drinking alcoholic, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I lived in the dark. I didn't know that I lived in despair. I didn't know that I lived in fear. I didn't know that I lived in ego. I didn't know that I was severely depressed. I didn't know that I was killing myself. I didn't know that I lived without God. I lived in the dark. And thank God it became too painful, and I came into the light, and I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was describing to some lady at breakfast this morning who's very new. I said, you're in the light here, and you've got 1,000 people. Every one of them wants the very best for you. And we can hold you, and we can protect you, and we can show you, and we can guide you. And if you go back into the darkness, we may not be able to find you. And I believe, and some of you may have heard this story before, but I think it's a great analogy, is that there are two wolves inside me. There's that wolf that lives in the dark. That wolf is a sexist, is a racist, is a murderer, is a thief. That wolf is for forgetting. That wolf forgets who it is, what it is, that it's a child of God. And so it lives in ego and addiction, and always is forgetting for itself and forgetting what it is. And then there's another wolf who's so kind and so generous and so loving and so spiritual and is in recovery. And that wolf would do anything for you. And you ask me then, which wolf grows stronger? And it is, of course, the wolf I feed. And how do I feed it? I feed it by being in Alcoholics Anonymous. I feed it by doing service. I feed it by loving and being loved. And so the other wolf is always there. There's always a possibility, but it does grow weaker. And what I must do always is not feed it. So when I meet somebody who wants to tell me a racist joke, or wants to be very sexist, or wants to gossip, or wants to do all those things, I have to reply in a more generous, loving, kind way and say, that doesn't really work for me. You know, I talk about the 7 C's, which it was beautiful hearing Hannah talk about relationships. And for me, we have on our fridge at home the 7 C's. And what I look at is criticizing, competing, comparing, complaining, controlling, condemning, catastrophizing. And as I do that to you, it is returned to me 7-fold, because I believe that we are all one. And I don't want to live my life like that. Because what I really realized very early on in my marriage, and I've been happily married for 25 years. You'll have to ask my wife how long she's been happily married. But we both knew very early in our relationships that actually we weren't using our own voices. We were using our parents' voices, stuff that we'd been programmed for. And being in recovery, I can change the program. The old program, the old wolf that knew that you wanted to be criticized, you wanted to be controlled, you wanted to be told what to do, but don't you dare criticize me or try to control me or tell me what to do. So it doesn't work. And I'm not interested in right and wrong. I'm only interested in what works and what doesn't work. So these last 2 years have been the most horrific for me and my family since I got into recovery. If financial and legal stuff happening, that's just been unbelievable. And it's brought me closer to the program. And I share this with you this morning because I want to be of service. We've had a very comfortable life for the last 27 years. Until the last 2, and we had this firm of accountants come against us, and my wife and I have had to go bankrupt, and it's been very, very tough. Now, we will get out of it, and it will be fine, but I've had to come closer to the program. And one of the things that really helps me, of course, is the Step 3 prayer. It's fantastic. It says, our difficulties we think were of our own making, so I take responsibility. And now I have to work on it, and I have to work very hard. And Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leads me by still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that's just worry, by the way, I shall fear no evil, for you are always with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me before mine enemies. You bathe my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I've said that, 3 times a day. And I absolutely love it. I love the faith that I've got in Alcoholics Anonymous, because without it, I would be dead. And I want to say to anybody who's in difficulties today, that with the power of prayer, it will work. It says in step 11, in the 12 by 12, The only doubters of prayer are the ones who haven't tried it properly. So what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, I love. I see Alcoholics Anonymous as a brightly lit motorway. And when you look at it, the destination is salvation. That simply means home. And the steps are the service stations. And occasionally we have the B roads, what you might call the slip roads. And they can be very appealing, because I also have an addiction to adrenaline. So I stopped drinking, I stopped drugging, and I still got myself into different forms of trouble, not realizing that, again, my difficulties were of my own making. And so I have to be conscious. Conscious. Con is with science. It's with knowledge. So if I do things with knowledge, it's working. And I've had so many beautiful experiences in Alcoholics Anonymous, and one was I was in South Africa about 3 or 4 years ago doing some business. And I met the King of the Sands tribe people and his medicine man. And they were all dressed in the leopard skin and all that stuff, you know, and it was the drums were going and all that, and it was, as I say, a business meeting. And so when the meeting was, I don't know what other meeting might have been, when it was coming to an end, this king said to me, "Well, is there anything else, Tom, that you'd like to ask me about?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Does your tribe have any traditions around forgiveness?" And he was a bit taken aback by that. And he said, "Well, yes, actually." He said, "When we send the young men out to fight to other villages or other tribes or whatever it is, when we know they're returning, what we do is we send the older men out to the edge of the village to climb trees and see when they're coming back. And when we see one of the young men is approaching, the man comes down off the tree and goes back into the village, and he gets the young man's grandmother. Not his mother, but his grandmother. And the grandmother comes out to the edge of the village, and she meets the young man who's covered in blood and full of anger and bile and resentment, hatred. And the grandmother hugs the young man until the tears flow and the young man remembers what it's like to be loved again. And at that point, he's brought back into the village. And in a sense, I believe that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has been for me and for everybody here. I've been in battle. I've been wounded. I've been full of resentment. And I've been loved back into the community, back into life. And I believe that forgiveness is the most important thing for me to have a good life. I don't pick up a drink a day at a time, and now I have to look at my emotional sobriety. And so in looking at that emotional sobriety, I look at forgiveness. So we talked about forgetting who God is and forgetting who I am. And now I have to look at forgiveness. For means already given. It's already given by God, and I have to channel that. And there's a beautiful Hawaiian tradition, which is just 4 short sentences. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. So what I want you to do just in this moment, maybe close your eyes and maybe think of either yourself or somebody else that you've had some difficulty with. And to yourself, silently, say, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I cannot love. I cannot be emotionally sober if I still carry resentment. It says quite clearly in the big book, resentment is the number one killer. Resentment kills more alcoholics than alcohol itself. We hear a lot in sharing about anger. And what I believe is that anger is simply fear announced. And so a lot of people don't want to say they're fearful, so they much prefer to talk about anger. But if I talk about fear, then it makes it easier to work on, because it's more honest than simply talking about anger. Now, you heard me talk about the Psalm 23. So what happened was that I had done one of those fools and horses things in my living room with a chandelier, and 6-bar chandelier, and I gripped it and it fell and smashed, and it was pretty severe. So I had to go and buy another one, and I was passing a junk shop, and I saw he had one old one there, and I went in, and he said, "Oh, I haven't opened this shop for 12 years. This is the first day. I'm just clearing it out." So I bought the chandelier off him, and he said, "Have a look in the back room, see if there's anything you want." And I was going through some pictures there, and I came across a framed edition of Psalm 23. And at that moment, I knew that I was held. I knew I was held by God. And there's a lovely story about a mountain climber. So this guy is climbing up the side of Everest, and it's getting dark. So he puts his tent on a ledge. So he's thousands of feet up. So he puts his tent on a ledge, and he goes to sleep for the night. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up, and he decides he needs a pee, and he forgets where he is. So he goes out, and he falls down the side of the mountain. So he's falling down the side of the mountain. He's going, "Ah!" And he says, "I've never believed in God, but if you're there, please help me." And at that moment, a branch pops out, and he grabs the branch. And he says, "Oh, thank you. And it's pitch dark. And so he says, "Please, if there's anybody up there, please help me." And a voice came down, and it said, "Let go." And he said, "Is there anybody else up there?" And so he clung to that branch all night in the freezing cold. He clung to that branch, and he waited. And when the sun came up in the morning, he looked around. He was 3 feet from the ground. Please God, we're all 3 feet from the ground. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom.